United States troops in Iraq have been attacked again overnight. This, you may be wondering, am I watching a repeat here? Am I watching a taped video? No, this is live because this keeps on happening. And we're still trying to get the details that come out right now. We don't have all the information, this breaking news that's coming out, but we do know that there have been Americans wounded. We don't know how severely. We don't know if any may later on die. We're not really sure, but we do know that this continues to move the United States in a perilous position to where this war could escalate. The very thing that I have been pounding the drums for years and definitely ever since October 7th, when the Israelis and Hamas went to war, that we must prevent escalation so that no more Americans get killed, so that American interests in the region don't get harmed. And now we're getting closer to it. Now, for those who may not know, this, I'm going to show you a little clip of what happened over last night, and pay attention to the number of attacks that have happened since the October attack, because that number keeps going up.
Rockets were fired at the Al-Assad air base in western Iraq. Some of those missiles were intercepted, but others did get through, and the military says it is still assessing the damage. The attack was carried out by an Iranian-backed militant group known as the Islamic Resistance, and it's the latest in a string of more than 140 attacks on U.S. bases across the Middle East since the start of the Gaza war.
Now, as CNN points out, well, I'll just let Nick Robertson speak for himself. Note carefully what he says at the beginning of this clip.
This has Iran's fingerprints all over it. What we know from the local mayor who was able to witness this attack on the Ain al-Assad airbase, he saw it from a distance, and he said he could see a lot of missiles incoming. Some of them were intercepted by missile defense systems, but some got through. And we understand from the Pentagon that there were injuries among U.S. service personnel. We don't know how many personnel. We don't know how severe. And this is a joint Air Force base. Iraqi military also there, and the Iraqi military say that at least one of their service personnel was injured in this attack. So this really does look like a ramping up, and when you take it in conjunction of what happened in Damascus this morning, you get the sense that this escalation everyone talks about, this is what we may be witnessing here.
And there is so much truth to what he said there. What he was referring to about Damascus was there was yet another Israeli assassination operation in Damascus against Iranian IRGC leaders that killed apparently one or possibly even more Iranian generals in there. And of course, they're vowing revenge again, as they always do, as these kind of things always have an impact. They don't stop anything. They don't deter anyone. They just ramp up and make people more angry and more likely to launch additional attacks of their own. It seems to be a never-ending thing, and now it's starting to amplify. Now, he specifically, Nick Robertson there specifically mentioned that Iranian fingerprints were all over it. Now, that's key, because there has already been, significant concerns in the United States among many loud voices that we need to go hit Iran in Iran, not their units in Syria or in Iraq, some of these Iran-backed militia groups. We need to go after the head of the snake, so they keep saying here. And as if, in fact, one of the biggest proponents is not just Lindsey Graham, who's, kind of nonstop with this, but also Jack Keane.
This also just in from the State Department. The U.S. remains incredibly concerned about the risk of the Gaza conflict spreading to other fronts. To what degree are you concerned that will eventually happen, General?
It's stunning to me, that statement, because it already has happened. Isn't it a fact that the Iranian-backed militias in Iraq and Syria have attacked our bases scores of times since the October 7th attack? Isn't it a fact that the Houthi rebels, sponsored by the Iranians, have shut down virtually 50% of the traffic flowing through the Suez Canal, because they're conducting attacks on the shipping lanes, despite the escort ships there by the United States? For the life of me, I don't know why we keep wringing our hands about the Iranians and are so feared by the fact that they will escalate if we take decisive action against them. I've never seen anything quite like it, that this administration is so unwilling to confront who the major oppressor and aggressor is in the region, Iran, and the fact that they are pulling all the strings here.
Now, I've obviously been saying, for those who've been watching and following some of my stuff that I've been writing and saying on television for many years, that all of these troops in Iraq and Syria do is serve as a point of strategic vulnerability for the United States. They don't add anything to our security. They don't help get rid of ISIS, which is the claim that they're there for. All they do is just serve as a target for these Iran-backed groups, making it easy for them to attack us. That's the purpose that they serve in here. And as I said on Fox Business News over a month ago, I said, look, there are some concerns that I have here, and here's the risk that America faces.
What is the White House doing with Iran, Colonel?
I certainly think that they need to put any suspension on anything going forward in that regard, and I think for the most part that they have. But the bigger issue I think that we need to pay attention to is our troops that are on the ground and so vulnerable in both Iraq and in Syria, because as I've been really pleading for years, that we need to get those guys removed because they serve no valid purpose for us, but they are a point of vulnerability that could potentially put us in a position where we have to respond to Iran if any of those troops are ever killed. I know there's going to be a lot of pressure for that, and I am staunchly for anyone who attacks American troops. They should be taken out and killed without question. But I'm also for not putting our troops in unnecessary harm's way. Those troops can be redeployed elsewhere where they're more used to us and in less available for the Iran-backed groups to attack.
Yeah.
So if the president had done so then, or if President Trump in 2019, when I first said this on Fox News, if they had withdrawn them then, none of this would be happening. Do you understand that? No American troops would be attacked because the Iran-backed groups wouldn't have access to them. They don't have the ability to project power outside of the region, or they would be doing it anyway. They can't, so they're limited to what we can do there. And when we keep a troop just sitting on a point on the map in Iraq or Syria and all these places, all we do is make it easy for Iran. Why do we want to do policies? Why do we want to keep our troops in ways that make it easy and accessible for our enemies? Think about that for a second. Think how nonsensical it is to put American troops that we claim to support and we claim to want to protect as one of our highest, objectives and expectations of our leaders. Why do we want to keep them on the ground so that our enemies can easily attack them? I mean, let that soak in for a minute. Let's kind of marinate on that, because that's the reality. That's a fact. That is a fact. It's not an opinion. That's a fact. That's what they're doing on the ground right now. And that's why, again, overnight, we've had this attack on our troops in the region. Well, now as we're trying to sort out exactly what happens, and as soon as we find out updates, we'll certainly let you know on those as well. But as we keep warning, what happens on the day that one is actually killed? It's a big issue for Americans, understandably, rightfully so. If our troops are killed, people are going to put lots of pressure on the White House to do something about it. Biden can't just say, oh, an American troop was killed. Oh, well, he can't do that and take no action. So he's going to come under extraordinary pressure to do so, to respond. And I'm sure that I can almost just guarantee you that Jack Keane and several others are probably going to go on television today and say, oh, look, see, I've been warning about this. Now that, we can't just keep letting this happen. So we need to go into Iran. There'll be a renewed threat and a pressure on the White House to strike into Iran. And folks, that is the wrong answer. That is not what we need. That is not going to help America. We need to withdraw our troops from these pointless operations, these pointless deployments that don't help our national security, remain a point of vulnerability. And this is graphically playing out as we speak. You see what the vulnerability is. This could draw us into a war. There's nothing to gain from this. If we go in and attack Iran, look, to those who are in this fantasy land that think, yeah, if you just go and hit them hard enough in Iran, then and only then will they get the message and they'll back down. Look, have you not been paying attention to what's been going on for the last, couple of decades at least? Iran doesn't back down. They are strategic about what they do, and they sometimes will bide their time, but they never stop. They always continue to go on there. They keep attacking and they look for new ways, and then they'll find some way to strike back. And when you hit them, they hit back. I mean, almost nobody does that, where you get hit and then you stop. We don't. They're hitting us. we don't stop, we keep escalating. They'll do the same thing. And gone far enough, this is going to potentially get us into a war with Iran that has no upside at all. So we need to get our troops out right now. Now, listen, what we should do is to say, okay, this is a strategic assessment. It makes sense. It's reasonable. Let's redeploy those troops. Let's get them out of Iraq. Let's move them elsewhere in the region, even where they're more protected. It's much harder for any of these groups to get to them. And all of our interests remain secure in the region. So that's what we should do. That makes immense sense for us to do. If we don't do that, though, because it makes sense, we may not have a choice. We may be shown the door and a boot on the way out, as the Iraqi prime minister himself just said.
The justification of the presence of the coalitions is to fight ISIS. And today, with the testimony of all the people in Iraq, ISIS is no longer a threat to the Iraqi people. We started to implement a commitment made by the Ministry Council, negotiate with the coalition to discuss how to finish this mission in Iraq. This commission will have to work on the meetings for the withdrawal.
So they want us out, and because they're tired, because they keep getting hit. They've been hit by Iranian people that come in and attack people, targets in their country. Now the United States is attacking Iraqi-based leaders, Iranian-based leaders in Iraq, and they're tired of it. They said, you know what? We want people out. We want the United States out. And look, one of our viewers here just asked a question here. Is there any truth to this issue that, it's a counter ISIS? Because that is what we're saying. That is what John Kirby, we've had him on here before to say that very thing there. And no, it's not. Because look, I was in Afghanistan at the height of the surge, and we had 140,000 U.S. and NATO troops to try to take out the threat of Taliban there, and to try to, destroy their ability to operate. It never had any chance to succeed. In fact, you can see over time from 2010, when I first got there on my fourth combat deployment, through the 2021, when the Taliban continued to grow in strength. Every time we would hit them, they would get bigger, until finally the Afghan government and military collapsed. And then the Taliban completely took over the country, where they are to this day. So the idea that we're going to defeat ISIS in the country of Syria, that we only have a couple of dots on the map, or in Iraq, where we're basically at a few bases like al-Assad, or in Baghdad and some other areas like that, of course, we're not going to have any success from that. That's just not how it works. People say that all the time. Government officials say it all the time. It's not true. So the answer to your question is no. It's not going to. And it's self-evident if you just look at what has happened and how things, and you understand how things actually work. So what the U.S. should do immediately is say, okay, we should have done this a long time ago. Now we're going to do it. We're going to withdraw American troops, redeploy them elsewhere in theater. Again, you don't even have to get rid of them. You can say, I think that we should just get rid of them entirely, because we have a lot of ability to project power. Our interests are not threatened in the Middle East beyond anything that we can control and handle with our existing forces. This should be withdrawn. But at least let's get them out of those easy harm's way, easy access to our enemies. Let's stop the vulnerability so that we don't have to attack into it, so that the president doesn't come under pressure. He doesn't actually then even wouldn't have to attack. But so he doesn't come under pressure to do something that's emotionally satisfying that could draw us into an actual war with Iran in the region. And God only knows what that could do, even to Israel, with Hezbollah could then go into attack. All these groups that are trying to do, these small attacks here, they could explode and do more. The Houthis could do more in their area. You see that this could go bad in any number of ways. It is time, folks, to end this strategic vulnerability, end this foolish policies that don't and help our national security, and stop the possibility of a war expanding, which will harm our interests and in no way, shape, or form improve anything for America. Our troops deserve to be protected by our country and preserved, and only used and put their life at risk if our national security is genuinely threatened. That's why they've signed up. That's why they serve. That's why we have an armed force. It is not to just put them in the middle of a damn desert with a target on their back and wait to see if they get killed. That is an abuse of our forces. That is a misuse of our armed forces and should not be done. And we need to stop it immediately. That is your deep dive for this Sunday morning. We will continue to keep you updated on this situation as it goes in, because we are unintimidated and uncompromised on bringing you the information you need on these very topics that really matter to our country. Be sure and join us tomorrow. We're going to have Tony Schaefer back on, one of our fan favorites, at 1 p.m. Eastern time on Monday. Join us then. We will see you next time on Daniel Davis Deep Dive.